We are continuing on Shulchan Aruch or Chaim Siman Kuf Lamed Tet is what we are starting today. Seder Kriyat Torah Birchoteha, the order of reading the Kriyat Torah and the Brachot, which Maran writes in Sif Aleph, B'makom shenagu sha'oleh atzmo koreh b'kol ram, in places that the minhag is that the one who gets the aliyah is the one that reads the Torah. Im lo sider tchila parasha pa'amayim v'shalosh beno leben atzmo, if he has not prepared the Kriyat Torah twice or three times, beno leben atzmo, between himself and himself, going over the parasha, preparing it, lo ya'aleh, you should not go up to the Torah, because if you have to read it, you have to be prepared for it. It's very interesting. The Rambam writes in the beginning of Igeret Hashmad, he's very disappointed with a person that wrote a psak of what people should be doing when confronted with difficulties of being forced to convert. And Rambam was very disappointed with the psak that he had written, and he vents out, he says, like, a person that wants to say something is really referring to this. Chazal say you have to at least review it 3-4 times before you say something of a Dvar Torah, of reading a public reading of the Torah. Says you want to write a psak, you want to write something that's going to stay for generations to come, you have to review it 1,000 times if it was possible. That's a kavod of the tzibur. You can't get up there without being prepared to read when you're not fit for reading it. And says the Shulchan Aruch, makom shachazan koreh hu sarich lesader tchila, and when you have the chazan, the Baal Koreh that's appointed to read the parasha, of course he is supposed to be reviewing it and come up there when he's ready, not to get up and kind of like wing it as he goes, but you have to come prepared. It's the kavod of the tzibur. Says the Mishna Berura, afal pish kar'u la'alot, in place that the one who gets the aliyah reads the Torah, even if they called your name, you're not supposed to go up. You could say, look, I do not know the parasha, I haven't prepared it well, so I cannot get the aliyah. Says the Mishnah Berura, ve'amru Chazal, this is a Gemara in Masechet Brachot, Daf Nun Hey. Gemara says, Shlosha dvarim mekatzrin yamav shel adam. Chalila v'chas, there are 3 things that shorten a person's lifespan. Ve'echad mehen, mi shenotnin lo sefer Torah likrot ve'eno koreh. One of them is someone that is offered to read the Sefer Torah and he doesn't read it. Right? Even with that Gemara in mind, still you should not go up. Even if they called your name. Why? Because disrespectful to the Sibur. You get up there, you don't know how to read it properly. You have to be prepared. And this has been supported by a pasuk in Iyov, as ra'ah v'yisaperah hechinah v'kam chakara, that you have to be mechin, you have to prepare yourself before being able to read in the tzibur. If a person knows the parasha well, imagine he's a Baal Koreh for years, he knows the parasha well, it's his bar mitzvah parasha, right? Or he's been a Baal Koreh for several years. Can he get off the hook and not be obligated to read prior to it and prepare? The halakha is no. Even a Baal Koreh who is an expert in reading, a person that is reading his bar mitzvah parasha that he knows well, still he has to be preparing it properly before this year's Kriyat Torah. That even with him being an expert, if he did not prepare it, even though that he would not make any mistakes, still the Ben Ish Chai writes in Torah Lishma, well, Torah Lishma, generally speaking, we assume that it's the Ben Ish Chai, but he writes in Shelot Utshuvot Torah Lishma that he should not get an aliyah, even though that we have in mind that Gemara that we just mentioned in Masechet Brachot Daf Nun Hey, still should not. Because this is chukat, zot chukat Torah. This is, he writes, the rule of thumb when it comes to Kriyat Torah, that the person is not allowed to read publicly in the tzibur unless he has prepared it at least twice or three times prior to reading it. And if a person has already prepared twice or three times the parasha, but he knows that he's not prepared yet, he knows I reviewed it twice, three times, but I still don't know it well, I'm not going to do a proper job. Some of the ta'amim I can't really make out. Some of the dikdukim I may still have few mistakes. The Kaf HaChaim writes that you're not obligated to read it so many times until you know you're going to be doing it flawlessly. You want to be prepared well. You did it 3 times, it's sufficient. Even if you are going to have some imperfections, that still does not obligate you to read so many times afterwards to know that you're going to be completely flawless. That's not the obligation. The obligation Chazal gave is 3 times. You read it, you prepare it well, and hopefully you'll do as good as you can. But that's still, says the Kaf HaChaim, is mitzvah min hamuvchar. The best way of doing it would be to do it in a flawless way. You want to do it so many times that you know that you have it really well. But it's not obligation. At that point, it's already midat chasidut. Now, this that we mentioned, the Gemara, this severity of a person rejecting Kriyat Torah from the Gemara in Masechet Brachot. There are those Achronim who write on the Gemara that if a person is running out of the shul, he is busy, he has carpool, right? So you call him to the Torah and he's like, it's going to run out right now. Can you say, well, the Gemara doesn't apply to him? Many of the Mefarshim say no. Still, like in the Sefer Chodesh Aviv, he writes, no, still applies to him as well. It's a disrespect that you call up the Torah, you're not going to get an aliyah, of course you have to go up. Rejection of an opportunity to say Birkat Torah publicly is a severe offense. But with all of that said, we mentioned that a person should not be getting an aliyah when he's not ready to be reading it properly. And Reb Chaim Palagi writes that if you're called up to the Torah and you reject to go up, we could force you to go up. That means you say no. It's like you gotta go up. It's not a taruf thing that you say, oh no. We take this very seriously because it's disrespectful to the Torah, and we don't allow, says Reb Chaim Palagi, disrespect. Just like we don't let a person do an isur, same thing is over here. We stop him from doing something that is going to put him at risk of sakana. So because the Gemara says mekatzrin yamav shel adam, he creates sakana for him, we will push him not to put himself into sakana in that way, says Reb Chaim Palagi. Now, Reb Chaim Palagi there says a story that there was a fellow that they gave him the opportunity of Kriyat Torah, and he was mesarev, he rejected it, and chas v'shalom, a short time afterwards, he was robbed by a group of bandits, and after they robbed him, they dropped him in hot water. Yeah, a tremendous thing. And says Reb Chaim Palagi that he was ne'enash with serefa in that way, because he was disrespecting the Torah that is nimshal la'esh. It says halo devari ka'esh ne'um Hashem. The Torah is exampled to fire, and therefore says Reb Chaim Palagi, because he disrespected the Torah in a way that was not important for him. Whenever they gave him aliyah, he said he was not respectful to it. He says, seems to him that it was midah keneged midah. He was burnt because of that disrespect. Now, if a person was not called with their name to the Torah, like some kehilot, they have, the Gabbai has the names. It says Yamod Ruben ben Shimon Shlishi bechavod. And then Reuben ben Shimon says no. Sometimes it's not like that. The Gabbai goes to a person. He says, would you like to have Shlishi? They didn't name him publicly Bekol Ram. In the Sibur, they just went to him privately and told him to get an aliyah. In that case, Maran Chida Alav Shalom, in his She'elot U'Tshuvot, Chaim Sha'al, writes this in the Ben Ish Chai, in Rav Pe'alim, he brings it as well, that in that case is not included in what Chazal say in Masechet Brachot Daf Nun Hey, that he's going to be Chas Shalom punished like that. That's not considered that they gave him the Sefer Torah to read and he rejected. They asked him, get an aliyah. I said, no, I can't do it now, or I don't want the aliyah. But when they do it publicly and he rejects it, he turns it down, that already is a public disrespect to the Torah. That's what we are talking about. Now, the Ben Ish Chai over there in Rav Pe'alim in Siman Tzadi, he adds that because he does not go up to the Torah when he did not prepare the reading properly, and therefore he's not getting the aliyah, he's not included in the klala because he's not doing it as a disrespect to Torah. On the contrary, he's doing it as a kavod for Torah. He says it's not respectful that I should get up there and make all these mistakes. That's not kavod at Torah. It's not because of disrespect or my kavod. I want to respect the Torah by not reading it because I'm not prepared and I'm going to make a bunch of mistakes. That's not considered a disrespect. Now, if a person is called up to a Sefer Torah that he doesn't know if it's a good Sefer Torah, let's imagine there's such a thing that people buy old Sefer Torah, especially before computer check was a thing. Going through checking Sefer Torah is a very tedious thing. You have to be alert. Even checking a mezuzah, I have a mezuzah in my drawer that has a very surprising mistake in it. And this was for years and years on the front door of a house. It's a beautiful mezuzah. And as making a point to people, I usually give it to people. I've given it to Big Talmidei Chachamim. I'm like, read the mezuzah, tell me why it's pasul. So I'm telling them it's pasul. So they're looking for a mistake, and they're looking there for 5 minutes. And they get frustrated. They're going back, forth. They can't find it. It has the most obvious mistake. It says in the mezuzah, Shema Yisrael, first line. And then I tell them, I say, look at the first line. Read the pasuk out loud. And then they can't believe their eyes. Because it says in the mezuzah, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Echad. It's missing a Yud Kei Vav Kei. Literally missing a Yud Kei Vav Kei. And most people can't. It's hard and tedious to check Sifrei Torah. You have to really be, well aware of all the psukim. You have to know the psukim by heart, and you also have to know the chaserot, the yeterot. When it's written with the vav, it's with the yud, without the yud, with the aleph, with the hey. Especially Sefer Torah, which is not the Shema Yisrael everyone knows by heart. The Chumash, not everyone. So it used to be much harder. You needed to really have experts. Nowadays it's a little easier. Still, computer is not sufficient. Also, once I have the microphone, I could say this. That people should not be trusting the socharim, the merchants necessarily of the Sifrei Torah, because they're not tzaddikim necessarily. They're business people. You have to really know your things and be watchful. I give you two examples. Two of the Sifrei Torah that I was involved with getting them, and I made sure to ask the person that was giving it. He represents himself as a Rav, even though that he's not necessarily but he says to me that sure, you should be comfortable. This has been checked by a sofer manually twice, and twice with computer. Baruch Hashem. Right? And then we're reading the Sefer Torah the first year, and when it says by Yaakov Avinu's tefillah, it says if you give me lechem leechol ubeged lilbosh, right? I can't believe my eyes. The Sefer Torah writes an extra bet. Instead of writing ubeged lilbosh, it's ubebeged lilbosh. 2 bets. Now, there's no way that the computer would miss that if it was actually checked with the computer. So you really have to know, a computer is very good. Certain mistakes the computer does not pick, and you need a sofer to go through it as well. But again, that's the other one that was more recent in the Sefer Torah by the Makot, that it turned to the dam. The dam was written lahem. Right? Again, pasul, and there's no way that the computer would make such a mistake. So therefore, a person should really be careful. So says the Ben Ish Chai, imagine if you have, and again, before the time of computers especially, imagine a person does not feel comfortable to get an aliyah with this Sefer Torah, because the Sefer Torah is an old one. He knows that no one really checked it. Maybe it's pasul. I don't want to say bracha on something that may be pasul. So therefore, he wants to turn down the aliyah, not because he doesn't want to get an aliyah. He would love to get an aliyah, but just don't want to say bracha on this Sefer Torah, because who knows if this Sefer Torah is even kasher. So says the Ben Ish Chai, in that case, or he's embarrassed, for instance. Let's imagine is a case that he, there's some shuls that they have a minhag that whoever gets up there says ba'avur shenadav. And instead of saying ba'avur shenatan matana lebet knesset, just saying, he gives the matana to bet knesset, and they kind of say he gives, and they wait for him to say how much. Right now, that would be okay in a regular hole in the wall minyan, but then you have some very affluent shuls that everyone is giving 5,000, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000, regular mishaberachs in the shul, right? And it's very uncomfortable if you go there. You want to say $52, right? So he's embarrassed to get an aliyah, not because he doesn't want to go up to that. He would love to, but he's dreading the consequences of having to get a mishaberach like that, which will be going through busha. So then the Ben Ish Chai right there in the Torah Lishma, he writes that in this case, he's not included in the klala of Chazal. He's not included in that Gemara that you're disrespecting the Torah. He has a legitimate reason why he's turning it down, because he doesn't want to say bracha in this Sefer Torah that may be pasul. Not that he's OCD, but really this Sefer Torah may have a questionable status, or he has a legitimate thing because he can't really afford giving tzedakah to the Bet Knesset in that way, and he's embarrassed in front of 300 people to be asked to give, and then he has to give a small thing, or he has to say something that he's not going to give. So therefore, that, says the Torah Lishma, is fine. It's not included in that klala. Now again, the chiyuv of a person that makes a mishaberach like that, how much mechuyav he is mitzad the nedarim, the brother of the Maharal. The brother of the Maharal has a whole piece in halachot of nedarim. What is it considered when you say ba'avura and you say 26, or you say 260 or 26,000? Is that a full-fledged neder? Is not neder? For auctionings that they have. Again, without getting into, generally speaking, we assume that that's considered nidres taka, and it has a very severe status. A person has to be on top of it. But again, this is a halachic diyun by itself, which is beyond the scope of this shiur right now. But if he has legitimate reasons like that, he's not included in the klala. But if he does not get along with the chazan, he doesn't like the chazan, doesn't want to get the aliyah because he hates the bar koreh. They got into a personal fight, or he doesn't like his voice, or he doesn't like the aliyah. This aliyah, I don't like this aliyah, right? Is the aliyah of kilalot, or is the aliyah this doesn't appeal to me? Then says the Torah Lishma, that is, of course, very disrespectful, or even if he has the money and he doesn't want to make the mishaberach and give money, he has the money, so there's no problem for him to give, and then they call him up and he rejects it because of his stinginess, because of his personal relationship with the Shaliach Tzibur, or because he doesn't really like the content of this aliyah, that of course is considered a disrespect to the Torah. And it says the Torah Lishma, that for sure would be included in turning down a Sefer Torah and everything that comes with that, unfortunately, as stated in the Gemara in Masechet Brachot that we mentioned. Okay, it says, we went on a long tangent over here, but back to the Mishnah Berura. This that Shulchan Aruch says that even if you have a chazan, the chazan himself has to prepare it. The Rama says, "Hu sarich lesader," says the Mishnah Berura, but Yevid im en sham bebet knesset mi shesider la'atzmo mitchila. If you bring out the Torah and say, "Where's the Baal Koreh?" There's no Baal Koreh. So there's a person that could read it, but he has not really prepared it. Right? Sounds familiar. And now he's, is it mutar for him? Well, the Shulchan says you should not do that. So maybe he should just sit down and say, I'm not doing it. Says the Mishnah Berura, if you're stuck in that type of situation, in order not to nullify the reading, the takanat chazal of reading this Torah in the tzibur, nagin lakel, the minhag is to be mekel, shekra echad sheyodea lenagen hatamim, someone that knows how to say the tamim, someone stands next to them and helps them with acrobatic waves with their hand. And afal pi shelo sider, vekorin lefanav belachash mitoch hachumash o sidur. And even if it's worse than that, and someone has to sit next to him and say to him the hard words, how they're pronounced, and he does it, it's fine. That was the minhag, to be mekel, in order to keep the takanav of Kriyat Torah. And even if you are not the one who is the Baal Koreh, you're just getting an aliyah, still would be l'chatchila that you should know the aliyah pretty well, says the Mishnah Berura. We're doing Shnai Mikra v'Chat Targum that the person has to do on Erev Shabbat. That's sufficient. That already is sufficient to get an aliyah. Ki nechshav b'cheshbon hasidur. That already is considered that you have prepared it properly, and you could get an aliyah. Now, our minhag is not for the one that gets an aliyah to be prepared. We're not makbid on it, even though that the Mishnah writes it and is bringing from the Achronim. It's not really the minhag. Ramor Eliyahu, others, they write that you get an aliyah, you don't have to know it well, as long as you could read properly with the Shaliach Tzibur following along the words that he says, you're good to go. Now, Chacham Badia is said to have said that even when you have a Baal Koreh, and the Baal Koreh has just done Shnai Mikra v'Chat Targum, that already is sufficient to be considered 2 or 3 times, and that would be sufficient. That concludes the first seif of the Siman. Bezrat Hashem will continue in the days to come.